We need more youthful concepts for our additive manufacturing section. My name is Zach Williams. I'm 53, and I felt like my professional life had just been tossed away by a manager who could have been my son. Cody Davis had been with Apex Industries for precisely a quarter of a year. I had been there for 17 years. I stood in his office, made of glass, watching him shuffle through documents he clearly didn't understand. Behind him, through the window, I saw the production floor where 9 industrial 3D printers buzzed in perfect harmony. Every single one of those machines ran on calibration protocols I had designed. Every tolerance, every parameter, every fail-safe, all of it came from my mind, my abilities, my long years of experience. Zach, I appreciate everything you've accomplished here, Cody continued, not even looking up from his tablet. But the industry is changing. We need new points of view. The board wants us to innovate, to modernize our methodology. I had trained 4 generations of technicians. I had grown the department from 3 basic printers to a complete production facility that generated $5 million annually. But that apparently didn't count as progress. When do you want me to leave? I asked. The end of the week would be best. Human resources will manage the transition. I nodded once. No anger, no begging. I had seen younger employees escorted out for less than this. I'll clear out my desk. Actually, Zach, we prefer if you only take your personal belongings. Security protocol, you understand. I understood perfectly. They wanted me out before I could document anything, before I could leave instructions, before I could make their lives easier. I walked back to my station, past the machines that had been my life for the better part of 21 years. Kevin, one of my technicians, looked up from a calibration screen. Is everything all right, Mr. Williams? Just fine, Kevin. Keep those tolerances tight. I gathered my coffee mug, a picture of my deceased wife, Sarah, and a small set of tools that had been my grandfather's. Everything else, the technical manuals, the protocol documentation, the troubleshooting guides, stayed exactly where it was in my head. As I walked toward the exit, I saw Cody through his office window. He was on the phone, likely already contacting recruitment agencies to find my replacement. Someone younger, someone cheaper, someone clueless about what they were getting into. I handed my access card to security without a word. The machines kept humming behind me for now. I had joined Apex Industries when 3D printing was still called rapid tooling. Back then, we had 3 machines the size of refrigerators that could barely print a teacup without deforming. The technology was rudimentary, but I saw its future. While other tooling experts dismissed it as a fad, I spent nights learning the software, studying the chemistry of various synthetics, understanding how pressure and air moisture affected print quality. Sarah used to joke that I talked to those machines as if they were sentient. She wasn't wrong. Each printer had its own personality, its own quirks. The Stratasys unit ran cold and needed constant heating adjustments. The older Dimension printer had a feed system that jammed if you exceeded a print speed of 65%. I learned to coax perfect results from difficult equipment. When Apex decided to expand the additive manufacturing section, they put me in control. I developed the protocols from the ground up. Every calibration sequence, every material specification, every maintenance routine. I implemented safeguards that prevented total system failures. I trained technicians to recognize early warning signs of problems. For 17 years, we had never experienced a complete production halt. Cody Davis arrived 4 months prior with a master's degree in business administration and grand schemes about effectiveness. He had never operated a machine, but he had spreadsheets showing how much the company could save with newer machines and younger employees. He talked about Industry 5.0 and artificial intelligence as if they were magical solutions that would eliminate the need for human expertise. I had tried to warn him about the complexity of our setup. Our 9 machines were not just printers. They were an interconnected system. The material handling, the climate controls, the quality control protocols, everything depended on precise tuning. But Cody only saw numbers on his reports. Production output, labor costs, efficiency metrics. The warning signs had been there for weeks. Cody started questioning my decisions. He brought in consultants who had never worked with our particular equipment. He talked about outsourcing tuning to automated systems. When I explained why that wouldn't work with our current setup, he accused me of resisting change. The previous week, he had asked me to document all our procedures for the transition. I told him the documentation already existed in the system. What I didn't tell him was that the most critical information, the tolerance specifications that kept everything running smoothly, existed only in my memory. Those numbers weren't written down anywhere. They were the result of years of trial and error, thousands of test runs, countless adjustments made at 3 a.m. when no one else was around. Now I sat in my truck in the parking lot, watching Cody through his office window, wondering how long it would take. I spent the weekend in my garage working on a project that had been unfinished for months. Sarah had always wanted a wooden jewelry box with intricate carved details. I never found the time to finish it while working 65-hour weeks. Now I had nothing but time. Monday morning, I didn't drive to Apex. Instead, I stayed home and sanded the jewelry box smooth, thinking about what came next. At 53, I was too young to retire but too old to start over easily. The 3D printing industry was tight-knit. Word would spread about why I left. Cody would make sure of that. Around 11 a.m., my phone rang. "Kevin, Mr. Williams, we're having some issues with Machine 4. The tolerances are drifting, and I can't figure out why." I almost responded, almost walked him through the calibration sequence that would fix the problem. Then I remembered Cody's words about youthful ideas and fresh perspectives. "I don't work there anymore, Kevin. You'll need to ask Mr. Davis. He said to figure it out ourselves. Said the manuals have everything we need." The manuals. I almost laughed. The official documentation covered basic operation and standard maintenance. What it didn't cover were the subtle adjustments needed to compensate for the building's ventilation system, the seasonal humidity changes, the way the concrete floor expanded and contracted with temperature fluctuations. Those adjustments were art, not science. "I'm sorry, Kevin. My hands are tied." I hung up and went back to my woodworking. The jewelry box was coming together nicely. Sarah would have loved the way the light danced across the carved roses on the lid. Tuesday, Kevin called again. Machine 4 was still drifting, and now Machine 6 was showing similar symptoms. By Wednesday, he sounded desperate. 5 machines were running outside acceptable tolerances. Production was slowing down. Quality control was rejecting 35% of the parts. I didn't answer his calls after that. Thursday afternoon, I drove past Apex on my way to the hardware store. The parking lot was full of cars I didn't recognize. Consultants, probably. Troubleshooters brought in to solve problems that shouldn't exist. Friday morning, I was applying the final coat of varnish to the jewelry box when the phone rang. This time it wasn't Kevin. It was Cody. "Zach, we need to talk. I don't work for you anymore, remember? The machines are experiencing some technical difficulties. We could use your expertise as a consultant." Technical difficulties, like they had caught a cold or something. I set down my brush and walked to the window. The morning sun was hitting the trees just right, casting long shadows across my yard. Sarah used to love mornings like this. "What kind of difficulties?" I asked. "Production issues, quality problems. Nothing we can't handle, but your input would be valuable." Nothing they couldn't handle. If that were true, he wouldn't be calling. "I might be available for consulting work," I told Cody. "My rate is $250 an hour, minimum 4-hour blocks. Payment up front." There was a long pause. "That seems excessive, Zach. That's the market rate for emergency troubleshooting. Take it or leave it." He took it. That told me everything I needed to know about how bad things had gotten. I arrived at Apex on Monday morning and badged in with a temporary visitor card. The production floor looked like a disaster zone. 4 machines were completely shut down, their error lights blinking red. The other 5 were running, but I could hear the strain in their motors, the inconsistent rhythm that meant trouble. Kevin met me at the entrance, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Mr. Williams, thank God you're here. We've been trying everything, but nothing works for more than a few hours." I walked the floor, listening to each machine, checking the readouts on their control panels. The symptoms were exactly what I expected. The calibration parameters were drifting because no one understood the environmental compensation factors I had built into the system. "What have you tried so far?" I asked. "We recalibrated everything according to the manual, brought in technicians from the equipment manufacturer, even had a consultant from Stratasys Corporate come out. And they all said the machines are operating within normal specifications, but we keep getting defective parts. Print jobs are failing halfway through. The quality control department is rejecting everything." I nodded and pulled out my phone, making notes. The problems were cascading exactly as I had anticipated. The drift in Machine 4 had been the canary in the coal mine. Now the environmental factors affecting one machine were affecting them all. Cody appeared beside me, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "So what do you think, Zach? Can we get this sorted out quickly?" "That depends. What changes have you made since I left?" "Nothing major. We'd brought in a new calibration consultant, updated some of the software parameters, made a few efficiency improvements." "Efficiency improvements?" I almost smiled. "Show me what you changed." For the next 3 hours, Cody walked me through the modifications his consultant had recommended. New temperature settings that were supposed to reduce print times, adjusted feed rates that looked good on paper but ignored the realities of our specific setup, software updates that had overwritten custom parameters I had spent years perfecting. Every single change was wrong. Not dramatically wrong, but subtly wrong in ways that would compound over time, like adjusting a clock by a few seconds each day. Eventually, you would miss your appointment. "This is fixable," I told Cody, "but it'll take time, and it will require undoing most of what your consultant recommended." "How much time?" 3 weeks minimum, maybe more, depending on how much damage has been done to the calibration baselines. Cody's face went pale. "We have orders to fill, contracts to meet. We can't afford 3 weeks of downtime." "Then you should have thought about that before you let go of the one person who understood your system." I watched him process that, the calculation happening behind his eyes. The cost of keeping me on as a consultant for 3 weeks, the cost of missed deliveries and canceled contracts, the cost of explaining to his boss why the additive manufacturing section had ground to a halt. "What would you need to fix this?" he asked finally. "Full access to all systems, authority to make any changes I deem necessary, and no interference from your other consultants." Done. I spent the rest of the day documenting the current state of each machine, building a repair plan that would slowly bring the system back to stability. But as I worked, I realized something that made me pause. They hadn't just changed my calibration parameters. They had changed them in a way that made the system completely dependent on constant manual adjustment. Without someone who understood the underlying relationships between temperature, humidity, material flow, and print quality, the machines would never run consistently. Cody hadn't just fired me. He had broken something that couldn't be easily fixed. On Thursday morning, I was calibrating Machine 8 when I discovered something that stopped me cold. The machine's maintenance log showed software updates I hadn't authorized. Someone had been in the system after I left, making changes to core parameters that controlled how the machines communicated with each other. I called Kevin over. "Who installed these updates?" He looked at the screen, frowning. "Mr. Davis brought in a consultant last week. Some guy from a company called Innovatech Solutions. Said he could optimize our network efficiency." Innovatech Solutions. I had never heard of them, but the changes they made were sophisticated, too sophisticated for a random consultant. This wasn't about efficiency. It was about creating vendor dependency. I spent the next hour digging through system logs, following the digital breadcrumbs. What I found made my blood run cold. The consultant hadn't just updated software. He had installed remote monitoring tools that gave Innovatech Solutions access to our production data, our calibration settings, our entire manufacturing process. Kevin, where is the contract for this consulting work? Mr. Davis has all that stuff. Why? I didn't answer. Instead, I went to Cody's office and knocked on his door. I need to see the Innovatech Solutions contract. Cody looked up from his computer, annoyed. Why? Are the updates causing problems? Just show me the contract. He pulled up a file on his screen and turned the monitor toward me. What I saw confirmed my worst suspicions. Innovatech Solutions wasn't a consulting company. They were a 3D printing service bureau, a direct competitor to our manufacturing operation. The contract was structured as a systems optimization agreement, but buried in the technical specifications was language that gave Innovatech access to our production data for quality assurance purposes. They weren't trying to fix our machines. They were sabotaging them while stealing our intellectual property. Cody, you've been played. What are you talking about? I turned his monitor back toward him and highlighted the relevant sections. This company isn't trying to help you. They're putting you out of business. Look at their website. Cody pulled up Innovatech's site. Their homepage featured case studies from companies that had switched from in-house 3D printing to outsourced manufacturing. Companies just like Apex. The software updates they install are designed to make your machines unreliable, I explained. Meanwhile, they're harvesting your production data to understand your customer requirements. When your machines finally fail completely, they'll be perfectly positioned to offer you a full-service alternative. Cody stared at the screen, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and something that might have been fear. But that would mean I got taken in by experts. And you let go of the only one who might have caught it early enough to stop it. I watched him realize what this meant, not just for the production department, but for his career. He had been at Apex for 4 months, long enough to take responsibility for decisions, but not long enough to blame institutional problems. Can you fix this? He asked quietly. Maybe, but not in 3 weeks. This is going to require rebuilding the entire software infrastructure from scratch. We're talking months of work. How much would that cost? I didn't answer immediately. I was thinking about Sarah's jewelry box, sitting finished on my workbench at home, thinking about 17 years of loyalty that had bought me exactly nothing, thinking about youthful ideas and fresh perspectives. That depends, I said finally, on whether you want to fix this properly or whether you want to keep pretending that experience doesn't matter. For the first time since I had known him, Cody Davis looked genuinely scared. I left Cody's office without giving him an answer. Instead, I spent the afternoon documenting everything I had found. Screenshots of the unauthorized software installations, copies of the Innovatech Solutions contract, a detailed analysis of how the sabotage had been implemented. That evening, I called my old friend Mark Johnson, who worked in corporate security at a Fortune 500 company. Mark had started his career as a machinist before moving into cybersecurity. He understood both worlds. Zach, good to hear from you. How is retirement treating you? I'm not retired. I got let go. And I think I've stumbled onto something you might find interesting. I explained the situation. The sabotage, the data theft, the systematic destruction of our manufacturing capability. Mark listened without interrupting, asking technical questions that told me he understood the implications. This is bigger than just your company, he said when I finished. If Innovatech is doing this to you, they're probably doing it to others. Industrial sabotage on this scale is federal crime territory. What would you do? Document everything, but don't tip them off that you know. If they realize you figured out their game, they'll shut down their operation and disappear. What about Apex? We have contracts to fulfill. That's not your problem anymore, remember. You got let go. He was right, but it didn't feel right. Kevin and the other technicians had nothing to do with Cody's bad decisions. They were good people who deserved better than watching their department get destroyed by corporate espionage. The next morning, I arrived at Apex with a proposal. I found Cody in his office, looking like he hadn't slept. "I've thought about your situation," I told him. "I can fix this, but it has to be done my way." "What are you proposing?" "Complete shutdown of the 3D printing operation for 1 week. We tell everyone it's for scheduled maintenance. During that week, I rebuild the entire software system from scratch, using clean backups from before your consultant made his changes. A week of downtime will cost us hundreds of thousands in missed deliveries. Innovatech is stealing from you every day. They're not just sabotaging your machines, they're copying your customer data, your part designs, your manufacturing processes. Every day you stay connected to their system is another day they build their competitive advantage." Cody was quiet for a long moment. "What would this cost?" $60,000, plus a written apology to my technicians for the mess of the past few weeks. $60,000. That's outrageous. No, that's what emergency industrial cybersecurity remediation costs. You can pay me, or you can pay Innovatech's ransom when they offer to take over your manufacturing contracts next month. I watched him calculate. $60,000 was expensive, but not compared to losing the entire additive manufacturing section. And I was betting he didn't want to explain to his boss how he had gotten the company hacked by a competitor. "Fine, but I want a guarantee that this will work." "Here's my guarantee. If I can't get your machines running at full capacity within 1 week, you don't pay me a cent." That afternoon, I started the shutdown process. One by one, the machines went dark. To anyone watching from outside, it looked like routine maintenance, but I was performing surgery, cutting out the disease that Innovatech had implanted in our system. I worked 19-hour days rebuilding calibration protocols from my memory, restoring backup files, testing every component of the network. By Saturday, I had clean systems running on isolated servers, but I wasn't done yet. I had one more surprise for Innovatech Solutions and for Cody Davis. Monday morning, I powered up the machines with their rebuilt software. Every printer came online smoothly. Their calibration parameters locked in perfectly. The production floor buzzed with the synchronized rhythm I remembered from 17 years of careful tuning. But the real show was happening in the network traffic. Before wiping Innovatech's software, I had modified their data collection routines. Instead of sending our production data to their servers, the system was now feeding them carefully crafted misinformation, false part specifications, fake customer requirements, completely fictional manufacturing challenges. At 11 a.m., I called Cody into the production area. "Everything is running perfectly," I told him. "Full production capacity restored." Cody looked around the floor, watching technicians load fresh print jobs into machines that had been dead for a week. The relief on his face was obvious. "How long will this last?" "Forever, as long as no one installs unauthorized software again." I handed him a flash drive. "This contains documentation of everything Innovatech Solutions did to your system. Dates, times, evidence of data theft. Also included is a report I sent to the FBI Cybercrime Division this morning." Cody's face went pale. The FBI. Industrial sabotage is a federal crime, especially when it involves theft of trade secrets across state lines. I thought they might be interested in Innovatech's business model. But that means Innovatech Solutions is about to have a very bad day. And when the FBI raids their offices, they're going to find servers full of stolen data from companies just like ours, companies whose executives made the same mistake you did. I watched him process the implications, not just the legal consequences for Innovatech, but the embarrassment of explaining to his boss how he had nearly destroyed the additive manufacturing section by trusting criminals. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now your machines run perfectly, your production data stays secure, and you learn not to let go of people who understand your business." I started walking toward the exit. "And Cody, when you write my check, make it out to Zach Williams Consulting. I've decided to start my own business. 4 weeks later, I was in my garage workshop, putting the finishing touches on a custom tooling project for a client in Pittsburgh when the news broke. Innovatech Solutions had been raided by federal agents. Their executives were facing charges of industrial espionage, computer fraud, and theft of trade secrets. The investigation had uncovered evidence that they had sabotaged systems at more than 45 manufacturing companies across the country. Kevin called that afternoon. "Mr. Williams, did you see the news? They're saying Innovatech might have stolen millions of dollars worth of data. That's insane." "Not really. Industrial espionage is a bigger business than most people realize. Mr. Davis has been asking about you. I think he wants to apologize." I smiled at that. "Tell Mr. Davis that apologies are free, but consulting advice costs $250 an hour. A week later, I got a call from a small defense contractor in Tampa. They had heard about what happened at Apex through industry contacts. They needed someone to set up a new 3D printing operation for specialized components. "We want to do this right from the beginning," the owner told me. "No shortcuts, no quick fixes, just solid engineering and reliable systems." "That sounds like something I can help with." I drove out to Florida the following Monday, Sarah's jewelry box packed carefully in my truck. I planned to give it to my daughter when I visited her in Miami. Sarah would have liked that, seeing her jewelry box bring joy to someone else. The defense contractor's facility was clean and well organized. It was the kind of place where attention to detail mattered, where experience was valued over buzzwords. It felt like a good place to start the next chapter.